You expose the shadows of those who would like to stay hidden each time you shine. They came for you for that reason. Not because you were mistaken, not due to your weakness. Simply by being there, you reveal the reality that they have been attempting to hide their entire lives. Not because you had anything to prove. The carefully constructed illusion, the show of might, the power they claim to have over you, they never wanted you to see it. It never happened. They wanted you to think so. Need you to have enough self-doubt to prevent you from ever questioning why their power at first seemed so brittle. However, something altered. You ceased requesting permission. You ceased looking to those who had nothing to offer for approval. And there was no mistaking the horror in their eyes at that very moment, due to the fact that their worst fear was not failure, but rather awakening. They built the scene for years, entangling the falsehood so tightly that you would never consider exposing it. They gave you an easier to manage and control version of yourself, encouraged you to be thankful and play little, told you that asking for more was selfish, that challenging them was betraying them, and that it was arrogant to stand in your own way, because it was risky to tell the truth. You were never beneath them because of the truth. You were never helpless. The issue was never you. It implied that every silent undermining of you, every insult and every whisper wasn't motivated by a sense of inferiority. It was because they always knew you were more, deep inside. And now that you can see it, their worst is coming to life. Not only the gaps in their narrative, not only the way they struggle to maintain control, but also the way they respond each time you advance. How their confidence falls under the weight of your presence. How their voices falter when they talk about you. And how their whole life appears to be focused on preventing you from seeing what has always been true. Their might was never sufficient to hold you down. They only lived as long as you were unaware of your identity. That's why they specifically targeted you. They knew you were unstoppable, not because you were weak. And you weren't supposed to sleep. An open attack is never the first step. They don't come charging in with their fists up and declare war on you in the middle of the day. No, that would be too evident and simple to uncover. Rather, they work in the background, shifting pieces when you're not looking, rewriting stories behind closed doors, and sowing doubt so delicately that even you start to question whether you're dreaming. A lost email, a project that was postponed, a well-timed critique that slows you down by making you question yourself. You initially dismiss it. Errors occur, and misunderstandings are common. The patterns then become apparent. The participants are always the same. You constantly running across the same minor annoyances. When you enter the room, the same tension is there, as if someone has put a hold on a discussion they don't want you to hear. You've seen it happen in that consulting business. Clients trusted you without question because you had established your reputation the proper way, through talent, results, and an unwavering sense of integrity. You didn't need to take any shortcuts. Playing dirty wasn't necessary to advance. It was sufficient that you just completed the task. That was precisely the issue, though, since your very existence posed a threat in a society where so many people rise by trampling on the backs of others. Even if you weren't participating in their game, you were still winning. And it was unacceptable. Eyes' falsehoods were never intended to last, and they have little legs, so they can't go far. They believed they had hidden their tracks, buried every evidence, rewired every aspect, and altered history to fit their tale. However, deceit is a delicate thing. One misstep, one missed error, and everything falls apart. It wasn't meant for you to know. Every small detour, every well-planned coincidence, every jigsaw piece moved just enough to give the impression that this was how things were supposed to happen. They had spent years ensuring that. However, the balance can be tipped by fate. It only needed one missed link, one lapse in their control system. You didn't even search for it. Perhaps you had already come to terms with the fact that the business was crooked, politicized, and biased against anyone who didn't want to play dirty. Perhaps you had begun to move on, persuading yourself that the setbacks were only a necessary part of the process. However, the truth eventually caught up with you. As evidence of their purported genius, the colleague who had made it their goal to reduce you had a client, their most valued one, that they flaunted like a trophy. However, they had never had the client in the first place. You were requested. Their request had been for your name. They had initially sought out the firm because of your reputation. However, the request had been intercepted somewhere along the line, silently redirected, hidden under layers of intentional misdirection and false narratives. Not because you were unworthy, not because they didn't think you were capable, but because the illusion they had created was directly threatened by your very presence. Because there would have been no denying the difference if you had been allowed to flourish. The world would have been able to recognize the distinction between manufactured prestige and earned accomplishment. Success is meant to be earned, constructed from the ground up, molded by aptitude, perseverance, and hard work. A foundation created by toil, sleepless nights, and the unseen struggles. You had that belief. It's what you experienced. However, they didn't create their own success. They had stolen it. At first, you didn't see it. You believed that they had earned their position by hard work, ability, strategy, and connections, all of which supported their arrogance. You never thought their whole career was just a shell game, where they moved parts about to make it appear as though they were involved in something they had nothing to do with. However, upon closer inspection, the truth was evident. The figures were honest. Almost 40% of their clientele, agreements, and collaborations may be linked to you. Relationships you developed, deals you started, and initiatives you started from the bottom up. They didn't belong to them. Theirs had never been. They were aware of it. For this reason, they put a lot of effort into distracting you, making you doubt yourself and making you reject your own intuition. Because you would discover they never had the skill if you ever took the time to look at the facts. The influence was never theirs. The power was never theirs. The only thing that kept them afloat was the access they had to you. They always thought they were above reproach. They worked in secret for years, planning actions behind the scenes and manipulating stories to fit their purposes. They flourished in secret because they were sure that you wouldn't figure it out, that you wouldn't examine it too deeply, and that you would never, ever understand how much of their success had been based on your name. However, pandemonium also arises when fear takes hold. They first persuaded themselves that they still had power and could repair, hide, and patch the flaws before the foundation collapsed. They acted swiftly, backdating emails, rearranging papers, and assigning responsibility to others. One issue, though, was that they were becoming careless due to their worry. They had been honing their scam for years, meticulously rerouting clients, tampering with contracts, and ensuring that your efforts always worked out better for them than for you. Every move was precise, well-planned, and almost tough to track down. Desperation, however, transforms individuals. Suddenly, routine system upgrades began making connections between previously unanticipated dots. Timestamps, email trails, and client communications, evidence they believed had been hidden, came to light. You witnessed what was previously subtle become into something glaring. The email could have been sent to the incorrect person. It may have been a report with inconsistent details. Perhaps it was a stutter in their speech, a nervous slip-up at a meeting, or the distinct sound of someone trying to keep up a lie they could no longer manage. It brought you directly to the truth, whatever it was. They were aware of it. This goes beyond business. This goes beyond one envious coworker, one dishonest system, or one unexpected betrayal. No, you've been experiencing this all your life. They spotted you as soon as you began to exhibit differences. They knew who you were before you ever realized it. They were alarmed by that, since individuals like you shouldn't exist. In their universe, no, not outside their authority. You were different from the others. You didn't adhere to the plan. They sought approval, but you didn't. Your presence was disturbing, even as a youngster, not because you disobeyed, not because you were challenging, but because you were independent. You were dangerous because of that. Reflect on the past. Even though you were the one performing the job, keep in mind how the professors treated you and gave preference to others, how they analyzed your every action while applauding mediocrity. Recall how some of your classmates singled you out. You refused to blend in, not because you were weak. The trend was consistent. Before you even had a chance to realize your own strength, they attempted to undermine your confidence and cause you to doubt yourself. They kept you apart because they were afraid of what you would do if you ever learned how valuable you were, not because you weren't deserving. They weren't simply responding to you, you see, because they knew something you didn't yet know, that you were always going to outgrow them. They were assaulting in advance, and they needed to prevent it from occurring. They therefore attempted to train you early, to make you doubt your intuition, to convince you that you were the issue and that they were the norm. What's the sneakiest part? It nearly succeeded. You assimilated their projections, opinions, and voices. When you ought to have been challenging them, you were questioning yourself. In actuality, they were never superior to you. Never were they more powerful. They were never more intelligent. Simply put, they were more adept at the game, the deceit game, the manipulation game, the game of preventing others who are similar to you from ever understanding who you are. The part they didn't expect, though, is that you woke up in spite of everything. You are still here in spite of their best attempts, the sabotage, and the years of being told you weren't good enough. They are frightened by that. After all, nothing can stop you today if you can ascend despite all of that. The truth, they say, will set you free, but most people can't take it. It's the entire cosmic download for the selected ones in the Obsidian Inner Order, not simply the truth. No sugarcoating, no way out. They tried to outpace you for years. As if this were a battle that needed to be won, they planned against you, examined your every move, and assessed your advantages. They compared their value to yours, believing that if they could simply maintain their lead, they would prove something to the world, to themselves, and to others. The thing that should most shame them, though, is that you never participated in the race. You didn't perceive them as rivals. They were on a ghost hunt because you weren't even playing the same game as them, who were frantically striving to remain ahead. They couldn't stop worrying about how to make you appear smaller. However, they weren't even on your mind, unaware that your presence alone had transformed their lives into a battlefield. You continued on with your routine. Some empires just take longer to fall than others. It was inevitable. You didn't need to do anything. You didn't have to reveal secrets, lay traps, or exact small-time retribution. You didn't need to push back in the manner they always worried you would, write a single email, or whisper a single word. No. You just needed to get out, and it was sufficient, because their whole empire, their name, their credibility, and the so-called expertise they used to build their profession were never theirs in the first place. You had it all the time, your network, your expertise, your efforts. It was your energy that moved everything. Without you, they were nothing. And the instant you left, the fissures that had always existed began to deepen. It started out small. A report without a detail. A customer who wasn't as keen to stick around. A meeting that wasn't as productive without your advice. Then, though, it accelerated. 5 questions were asked. 5 became an audit. Everything was revealed by the audit. Years of covert manipulation, diverted success, and falsified data. everything began to come to light. And those who had formerly admired them, who had listened to them without question, who had believed what they said, were beginning to see through the delusion. The problem with deceit is that it depends on more than simply the lies themselves. It depends on people not paying too much attention. And nobody did for a very long time. They're searching. Furthermore, they are not discovering greatness. It's not a strategy. It's hardly the brilliance that these phonies have always claimed to possess. It's a blank area, a hollow throne supported by borrowed authority, and it's collapsing without you to support it. They used to be your reputation's guardians, to make sure that no matter how excellent you were or how much of an effect you had, you would always be questioned. They shaped tales behind closed doors, controlled the conversations in the room, and influenced how people saw you. And it worked for a time. Opportunities that should have come easily to you were thwarted before they ever reached your hands. The underlying opposition, the way people paused while speaking to you as though they had been warned about you. Even if you couldn't see the strings, you could sense them, the unseen web of lies that they purposefully and meticulously twisted around you to keep you in check. Before you ever had a chance to present yourself, they were whispering about you, sowing doubt before you could prove yourself, and influencing how other people saw you before you had a chance to be seen. And you asked yourself questions for a time. You questioned whether they were correct. Perhaps you weren't as competent as you believed, and whether you truly deserved the respect, success, and recognition that constantly seemed to elude you. That's the problem with lying, though. As long as people believe them, they will continue to have influence. Nobody does. The whispers are no longer on their side. The people they used to be able to control so easily are beginning to see through the facade, because they lost control of everything the instant they lost control of you. The story has been reversed. Their statements are no longer relevant. Their charges come out as pitiful, weak, and desperate. Their former supporters of their rumors are no longer paying attention. The same people who used to avoid you are now wondering why. What's the worst? They are unable to stop it. You are rewriting your own tale after they spent so much time attempting to ensure that you never had control over it. Not by playing the same shady game they did, not by manipulation, nor by retaliation. Just by being who you were always supposed to be, you're winning. And they will never be able to reverse that, because the truth always triumphs over lies. And they've run out of time. You didn't have to talk. You never had to prove yourself. At their table, there was never any struggle for a place. You simply had to be there. And it was enough to put them into a tailspin. They had been avoiding it all their lives, but your presence made them face it. Their own inadequacy, their own insecurity, their own incapacity to become what you are at your core. They were preoccupied with undercutting your affirmation, even if you weren't looking for theirs. They treated you like an enemy even though you weren't in a competition, because they were reminded of the truth by every stride you made, every ounce of confidence you carried, and every win that came without dishonesty. To feel strong, they had to plot, control, and demolish. They were incensed because you never required trickery, because they choose to tear you down rather than heal their own wounds and get healthier. And you remain standing. You still get up, not bothered, unfazed, unstoppable. And that is something they will never get over. They tried everything, including manipulation, sabotage, and falsehoods. Whatever it takes to weaken you, to get you to question your own abilities, to subdue you. They believed that you would ultimately break if they pushed you hard enough. However, you didn't. Every blow, treachery, every whispered assault intended to undermine you was taken by you, and you took it in. You didn't break down, you didn't back down, you didn't plead for forgiveness, you adjusted. You honed your intuition. You became adept at moving silently. They were no longer able to touch you, and they are frightened by that, since you were never weak. They were never able to use their machinations to destroy you. You got stronger every time someone tried to destroy you. Every failure served as fuel. They knew they had lost the instant they came to that realization. The power was never truly theirs. You did. You do more than simply survive. You rule. And they are nothing more than a lesson you outgrown. The people who previously considered themselves your greatest danger. The once they chose to challenge you. They lost. They moved in secret, planned strikes they were sure would destroy you, and plotted for years. They heaped every barrier in your way, rewrote reality, and murmured behind closed doors in the hopes that you would crumble under the weight of their lies. However, you didn't. You didn't have to battle them. You never have to defend yourself, strike back, or disprove them. You allowed them to go out of control. Allow them to exhaust themselves attempting to shatter an indestructible object. And you got up as they fell apart. You weren't even looking at them as they watched every move you made. Even though you never stepped into the ring, they regarded you like an opponent. The one thing that sealed their fate was their fixation with controlling yours. As there is no denying the reality, the checkmate is your very presence. They are standing among the wreckage, age of their own choosing, knowing they have no control over it, and seeing you rise. Their worst nightmare has come to pass. You didn't have to play their game to win, without becoming someone else, without making an effort.